Hey there, welcome back to Geeky Greenhouse. In today's video, I'll be showing you when and how to harvest garlic. So garlic is one of the easiest crops to grow. You basically just throw the cloves in the ground in the fall, and in the midsummer, you're ready to harvest your garlic. As long as your soil is in good shape, it's really easy to grow. And this year, this has required basically no maintenance. But it is time to harvest now, and there are several signs that the plants give when it's time to pull your garlic out. We're growing all hardneck garlic because we live in a cold climate with a winter, but really the same principles apply whether you're growing softneck or hardneck. The only difference is you want to harvest the scapes off of your hardneck garlic about a month before you're harvesting. We have another video about when and how to harvest garlic scapes, so if you're at that point right now, that video will be a good one to watch. So timing your harvest is really important with garlic. The size of your garlic bulb is going to double in the last stage of growth. So if you harvest a little bit too early, the cloves may not be quite full grown and they won't fill out the wrapper. But if you harvest too late, they may have begun to separate, which can really decrease your storage time. So one of the best indicators of when to harvest your garlic is to look at the foliage, and you'll notice that the bottom leaves are starting to die off. This is a point when people really start to worry about their garlic. They think they need to feed or fertilize, but you actually want the foliage to start to die back. That's a good sign that the garlic is growing as desired. So a good rule of thumb is you want about 40% of the leaves to have died back and the remaining 60% to still be green. Now the bottom foliage is what will die back first, and the upper foliage will remain green as time goes on, but you want to catch it right around that 40% mark. Some people go for 50-50, so half of the leaves are dead and the other half are still green. Be sure that you don't miss the lower leaves. The very bottom leaves sometimes die back so far that you can barely see them anymore. They really shrivel up really small, but you want to make sure that you're counting the leaves. So say your garlic plant has 10 leaves. You want 4 of those leaves to have fully died back, no more green on those leaves, and the upper 6 leaves to still have green. The other indicator that garlic is ready to harvest is after the scape forms on hardneck garlic. It's usually about a month later that you're harvesting the actual bulbs. So with all of that in mind, our garlic is of course ready to harvest. That's why we're here today. So the actual method we use to harvest garlic is not quite as simple as you might think. You don't just want to grab the base of the plant and yank upwards. That will risk breaking the stem at the junction where it meets the bulb. You don't want to break that off. That will affect your storage times. So instead, you want to use a trowel or something similar like this. You can use a pitchfork and just dig around the base of the garlic. You want to make sure you're not hitting the actual bulb. So you could use a pitchfork or a small shovel or trowel like this and just dig and loosen the soil around the bulb, around the roots, so that it's really, really loose. At that point, you can dig up the actual bulb and pull it out. Careful not to damage the wrapper around the bulb. So down here is our first leaf. You can see there's almost nothing left of it, but you can see where it sort of wraps around the next leaf, which is here. And then this is our third leaf and fourth leaf. All of these are completely dead, and this one's on its way. But there are 10 total on this plant. 4 of them are fully dead, and so this is at the perfect point to harvest. So to do that, we're going to use this trowel and just dig about 3 inches from the stem, like that, just to be careful not to damage the bulb. And then just sort of pull back and go around in a circle around the plant. Like that. It'll start to loosen. You can sort of pull some of the soil back so you can start to see where the bulb is actually at. And I can start to see it there. And sort of pry it up, and now the plant is loose, I can see. And at that point, we can pull up and just gently brush off the soil from your bulbs. Okay, so I harvested a few bulbs. It smells amazing and it's dirty, so your first instinct may be to go and wash these off and spray them with a hose to get all the dirt out, but you definitely don't want to go doing that, especially if you're planning on storing the garlic. If you're planning on using it right away, which you can do, you can definitely wash it off in the sink and you can prune off the roots and prune off the foliage. But if you're planning on curing and storing it, which we're about to talk about, you basically just want to brush it off lightly and avoid damaging the bulbs at all. So leave the roots intact, leave the stem and all the foliage intact. You don't want to disrupt anything. Okay, so we've brought our harvest inside, and like I said, curing is the next step, but only if you plan to store your garlic for the long term. If you grow a lot of garlic, storing it is really useful. You can use it throughout the year until you have your next harvest the following year. So to do that, basically your goal is to dry out the garlic, and to do that you basically put it in a room that is well ventilated and out of the sun. It doesn't have to be indoors. If you have an indoor space, that's great, but it can smell a little bit. So if you have an outdoor space that's covered, like a porch or a roof that goes over a patio or something like that, or even underneath a tree, anywhere where you're out of the direct sunlight and there's good airflow coming across the garlic. You want to try your best to avoid temperatures above 90 degrees Fahrenheit and humidity levels above 80% humidity. But those are just rough guidelines. You know, if it goes above 90 degrees one day, it's not going to ruin the garlic, but just do your best to get them into a location where you know it's not likely to go above that mark. So how you hang the garlic is really up to you, but most people just use string or whatever you have lying around to get the garlic to hang. Just have them next to each other on a string of some sort, hanging in the breeze. Now the process of curing usually takes about 2 or 3 weeks, and you can know that the curing is done when the outermost layer of the wrapper around the bulbs is completely dry. You want it to be papery. It'll sort of feel light and dried out. And the center stem of the hardneck garlic will be totally hard and crispy to the touch. At that point, you can do a little bit more of a thorough cleaning. You can clean off all of the excess dirt with a dry towel, and then you can also remove all of the foliage and the roots, and at that point, the garlic is ready to be stored. And always remember, no matter what stage you're at of curing, you can always grab a bulb and use it in the kitchen if you need some extra garlic and you don't want to wait for it to be finished curing. That's totally fine. You can grab a bulb and use it as needed. So once you're ready to store your garlic, you want to pick the coolest room in your house. You do want there to be good airflow if possible. Some people will store them underneath the sink, but that's not really ideal because you don't really have any airflow coming in or out of that space. So try to pick a spot where you have at least some air exchange. You want to try to keep the humidity below 75% for better longevity. And keep in mind that different varieties are going to have different storage times. So if you're growing multiple types of garlic, you want to label the types that you've grown so that you know which work best for you. At higher humidities, you may start to see some root growth from the bulbs, and that's really not ideal. If you see that starting to happen, try to reduce the humidity and use the affected bulbs first. So properly cured garlic will usually store around 2 months at normal room temperature. Now 2 months is sort of a loose guideline. Many people will store their garlic for a lot longer than that. They'll have garlic all year long. But as time goes on, the cloves of the garlic will sort of start to dry out and become a little bit spongy and less desirable in the kitchen. Now, if you do damage one of your cloves in the process of harvesting, just use that one first in the kitchen, clean it off, and cut off the foliage, and just put that in the kitchen to be used next time you need garlic. So I hope you have a successful harvest of garlic this year. I love growing this crop, and we seem to grow more and more every year. I can't wait to save some of these cloves and plant them this fall. And we'll have a video soon about planting garlic, so we'll have a full circle compilation of growing garlic from start to finish. Once that's complete, we'll definitely have a link in the description to a playlist so you can see the entire process of growing garlic, so check for that in the description below. Thanks for watching Geeky Greenhouse, and I'll see you next time.